Village of Machesney Park Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Mr. Secretary, please call roll.
Commissioner Klinger,
Here.
Commissioner Heiden's here, Commissioner Fluger,
Here.
Commissioner Danielewicz,
Here.
Commissioner Stanton,
Here.
Commissioner Elms,
Here,
Commissioner Higgins is not present.
we have a quorum, so we'll continue. Everyone should have received the minutes from August 28th, 2023. Are there any questions or additions concerning that?
Nope.
Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Communications.
I just want to let everybody know that our offices here are going to be under construction, and next week, we're aiming October 4th to be moved into a temporary location for our offices. We're going to be up on North Alpine at the Servicom building. We are still going to have these meetings here in this boardroom, though. But if anybody needs to talk to us, and you'll still call the same phone numbers, but
Just that
don't
side of
expect
the
to come in here to talk to us in our offices, but next week. And we're going to be in a temporary location, possibly till the end of the year.
Probably to the end.
Yeah.
Maybe even into January.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, we're not using the whole Servicom building. We're just using some of the offices.
Okay, thank you. Item 5, resolution number 54-R-23, standing operating procedures permitting fences in the 100-year floodplain exempt from the floodplain development permit review. Carrie.
So every time somebody wants to build a fence in the 100-year floodplain, that's an area where floodwater just kind of pools. It doesn't have a current or anything. It's not going to knock anything over, but it's an area where floodwater is stored that we regulate. We are supposed to require a floodplain development permit, which requires our village engineer's review. And pretty much every time he sees no reason not to permit it. It's we're talking about 4x4 fence posts creating some impervious area, but it's not enough. It's not like a whole structure. Or like an enclosed building, I should say, because the fence is a structure. That's why they needed to get the floodplain development permit. But to go through that extra level of review with additional fee to cover our engineer's review fee for things that are pretty much always a non-issue seems excessive. And our engineer, Chris Dopkins, suggested that we come up with some situations where I can approve the floodplain development permit for a fence in the 100-year floodplain without requiring his review. So in your packets, there's 4 criteria. If any of those 4 criteria apply to a particular fence permit, then we do not need the whole floodplain development review process.
Can I ask a question about the third one?
Yeah.
Just for the 200 feet away, is that any portion or all of it has to be that portion away?
If the whole fence is at least 200 feet away, is how I was thinking about that.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Type of fence, does that matter?
That doesn't matter. People think that a chain link fence is going to be fine. But when you have a flood and there's leaves and other debris,
Right.
that becomes a solid
Right,
area,
that's kind of a
basically.
net, so,
Yeah.
okay. But we're talking about low chance of flooding. Anyway, right?
Well, it is an area that's going to see some water in a 100-year flood event that happens every few years recently. But when we're talking about just a fence in an area where there might be a few inches of water, here's the ground, the water might get this high, and we're just talking about a fence. The water's just it's not gonna cause additional flooding on other properties in most cases.
Do we know how many potential occupancies that could request it? Yeah, I mean, do we know?
Oh, like how many fence permits I get in the 100-year?
No, well, how many could you get? They don't already have a fence, but they want a fence. So is there 50 in that area? Or is there?
Though, I mean, I probably so far this year, I've probably done 5 that are in the 100-year. But there's a lot of, and I don't know if you can zoom in on that map, especially around Willow Creek. Yeah, if you can go like on the other side of Alpine.
Oh, I wasn't even thinking of that.
Yeah,
I
that's
did read
where,
through it all.
that's where we kind of feel bad making them get the floodplain development permit.
Okay.
It takes a while
To
to
the-
fill in.
to the
When I was
south.
looking at it today, yeah.
Yeah, I think kind of south behind the high school is where there's already a lot of people with fences. Some of them went up before that area was mapped floodplain, because every 10 years the flood maps are updated, and we end up having more properties that are in the floodplain. Some of them went up a long time ago, and they've just continued to be maintained. So when there's already a fence right next door, it's hard to tell somebody you need to go through this whole engineer review and submit these, engineered plans for this fence.
Right. Gosh.
It's sometimes that they want to put a fence where they already have their home, and the home is actually between the waterway and where they want to put their fence, and it seems silly. It's like, I already have a home that's blocking the floodwater more than my fence ever would.
So of the 5 that you had this year, all of them met all these criteria? There's no additional?
There have been some that did not meet this criteria, where I wasn't comfortable even suggesting that they don't need a floodplain development permit, because it is close to the edge of the floodway. And the water is like a couple feet deep in that area, where I wanted the engineer's review for sure, but most of them aren't an issue.
I have one concern we might consider. So the ordinance still says what it always said, and that is that you're supposed to get this floodplain development permit
Yeah.
and follow these procedures. So we're passing an SOP that basically by resolution is administratively saying we're not going to follow these.
Well, and our engineer, and I look at it because Chris is okay with these.
No, I get it. I
Mhm.
get it. I'm not being critical of this process, but to do it perfectly, we should probably take the,
Still have the floodplain development permit filled out.
no, you should drop into that, do an amendment to that section that says, the staff is allowed to establish a standard operating procedure to waive these procedures administratively. So
The
that the
reason,
statute, so that the ordinance authorizes you to do just what you've done, create a standard operating procedure to waive.
the reason I went this route rather than amending the code is because that chapter needs to be approved by the state. It's our floodplain development regulations.
And you think if you put a provision in there saying, I wouldn't put the details of the SOP in there. I would simply put that administratively, staff has the right to waive it.
I don't know
Under
how,
certain
I
circumstances.
think the state would want more information and possibly have an issue with whether,
Yeah, so then I struggle
Yeah.
with what would the state say if they knew we were ignoring the ordinance?
well, and for Notch, is it our engineer has decided these are cases where I'm going to approve the floodplain development permit anyway.
So maybe the ordinance could have a sentence that says the engineer has the authority to waive his review and authorize staff to follow a standard operating procedure. I don't know, I just,
Yeah, I
You
mean,
see what I'm saying?
sometimes that we've suggested amending a floodplain development permit, and I've asked the state, how long is it going to take for you guys to get back and review this? And then I get passed on to more and more people. I think so-and-so needs to approve it, send it to them. No, this person needs to review it, and it just,
so if we change anything in our ordinance, we have to send it into them or something?
if we change anything in our floodplain development ordinance, we need the state to approve it and to decide that we can still participate in the National Flood Insurance Program.
Well, there's a catch-22 in there that I'm just saying, I hope we never get caught on, because technically not following our ordinance in these certain circumstances. That's my concern.
Right,
And-
I'm following you there.
Mm.
Having to have gone through that for a different thing, with the carport and to get permission from the state. And
Well, that was because he was in the floodway.
yeah, because
We're
that was in
talking
the
about
floodway
it-
and we're out of the floodway
That's
here.
right. We're only talking about the 100-year floodplain. But we still have our own floodplain development regulations that are,
Which I think the state recognizes municipalities to have their own little rules,
but the state needs to approve them.
but the state,
Yeah, for us to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program.
right. And much less the federal grants for buying out other things. It's all tied together.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm comfortable with making them fill out a floodplain development permit, but our engineer wouldn't have to review it. I would review it to see if it complies with these 4 things.
okay.
And if it doesn't, then he would have to review it.
Should we table until we get more answers? Or-
No, I think we can go forward with this. I might want to explore whether there's a way to kind of get to where I want to be without causing a whole, but I don't think we need to hold this one.
What's the requirement in the code say? Just that they need the permit?
Right now,
or-
well, now it says structures in the 100-year floodplain are not permitted unless a floodplain development permit has been approved. It doesn't say that the village engineer has to review it,
Okay.
but because he's more versed in what flood storage capacity is and what's going to compromise flood storage capacity, I always have him review it. And these are cases where he doesn't think flood storage capacity is going to be impacted at all.
So then if they still fill out the form, that would qualify for what we have approved, and then the SOP would,
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
following you, and maybe that dovetails into what you said, issue them the permit.
mhm.
We just
So
went.
Chris ultimately,
Just Chris is
Chris-
already
Cr-
approved.
Right
one.
now, Chris gives his recommendation to me,
who approves the engineer plan? That says it's okay.
and I approve it based on Chris's comments.
No, I mean a structure, not a fence.
And then, anything that's built in the 100-year floodplain, I send that to Chris.
Okay, so
He gives me back a
So if he
recommendation.
did fill it out, say,
But he's
Rubber
basically
stamp.
saying, under these 4 circumstances, I don't even need to look at it.
Yeah.
Then issue them the permit. Then we're in compliance with our ordinance.
Mhm.
Okay,
That's my thought.
So piggyback on that is, in the code, the state code, since it's not a structure, meaning a permanent structure, a fence isn't considered that.
It's a structure.
it is.
So that
It
they-
is considered a structure.
But I
Yeah.
think they specifically say section C permits fences, which does not need a state permit.
I don't know what you're referring to, I'm sorry.
I'm pretty-
It might
I
be in
can
the
look it
code.
up for you,
Are you talking
Which
about
then-
one of the statewide permits?
the statewide permits.
Because fences are listed as something that needs,
So we might not even, fences might not even fall within the preview of the
no,
state.
and the state definitely has to approve fences.
Well, especially there's the floodway.
It's not
and
an
the
exception,
floodplain, so
yeah.
there's 2 different, this is in the floodplain,
Mhm.
not the floodway.
I think he's talking about he was questioning whether the state reviews fences in the floodway, and they do. It's not listed anywhere as an exception
Okay,
or qualifying for a statewide permit. And some fences can be trouble.
yeah, that's right.
But in these
It's
4
just that extra,
situations,
it's that extra layer,
yeah,
floodplain, floodway, and then the 500-year flood, which is the yellow. Is that the
yeah,
yellow?
that's the golden color up there is a
Gold,
500 year.
yeah. So are you gonna beef up the fee for, the permit, since it takes a little bit extra work, or there is no extra
No,
work?
I mean,
actually takes less work, right?
well, it would
Yeah,
take,
this will take less.
it might take a little more work on my
Less
part,
time.
but,
Uh-huh. But in
but not
general,
enough to justify increasing the fee.
but no more work than a regular fence approval
No.
outside of all this?
No, some fences I look at for 2 seconds, some of them I need to delve into more.
Mhm.
And but regardless, we always charge $20.
Gotcha,
Okay,
So then is this something to vote on then?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because this will go with the recommendation
Yeah,
on
you
to
need to make a
committee.
recommendation to the board.
Okay, gotcha.
so I need a motion.
Motion,
Yeah.
motion to
I'll
approve.
second the motion.
Mhm. Any further discussion? I don't think there's any.
No findings.
No.
We're all good.
So we have a motion and a second. Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Heideman's a yes. Commissioner Holmes,
Yes.
Commissioner Fluger,
Yes.
Commissioner Klinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Danielewicz,
Yes.
Commissioner Stanton.
Yes.
So we'll send this with a positive recommendation to the planning and economic, I think.
Yep.
So, okay. Item 6, ordinance number 41-23, text amendment to zoning code, adding regulations for residential short-term rentals. Carrie?
So these are the Airbnb, VRBO, vacation rentals that we don't regulate at all now. Every time somebody inquires, it's usually a realtor who has a client who's looking to buy a property just to lease it out as a vacation rental. I always tell them we don't have any rules right now, but that doesn't mean we might not in the future, because this has been something that we've had in mind for a while. We don't have any issues right now with any that are in the village, but we know that there's neighboring communities who have had some issues. So I was deciding whether to require a special use permit for these or whether to approve them internally. And we decided rather than have each of these have to be approved by the board as a special use permit, we'll just have some pretty specific standards in order for us to approve it as staff.
Robust would be my term. They are robust.
So they do need to apply for a license. We're calling it a license because it would be something that would expire every year that they would need to renew. The fee for that license is going to be $400. The owner of the property would have to be the applicant. We don't want anybody to be leasing their property and then sublease it out as a vacation rental. We prefer them to live nearby. I put within 45 miles in case there is something that, it becomes an issue, and so they can be responsive. If they don't live within that area, we'd like somebody local to be a secondary contact person. That's all explained in the ordinance. Some of the things that I wrote in here to try to avoid some problems is there has to be at least a 2-night stay. I think sometimes when somebody's renting out one of these just for a one-time party, they aren't going to stay 2 nights. They just want to book it for 1 night. I put 32 consecutive hours. I was just thinking how if you stay at a hotel 2 nights, you usually check in at 3 in the afternoon and you have to check out by 11. And that would be like a 32-hour stay that somebody would stay.
I would note
these
later
homes.
in the ordinance, you say 2 nights.
In the definition,
It says 2 days.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
says 2 nights versus 32
And
hours.
then-
I think those need to be consistent.
I can make them consistent.
I just noticed that it was.
Yeah, I was just trying to kind of make the definition less cumbersome, I guess.
I guess you can't go 32 hours without having it be 2 nights, so I guess it works.
Another thing is limiting the number of people there at any time. No more than 12 people. And Jonathan emailed me, he noticed a typo. I had written 10, but then 12 in parentheses, because I was wavering between 10 and 12, and I only changed one of those. But it's going to be 12 people that we would limit to regardless of the size of the property or the age of the guests. But overnight, between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m., which is the hours that our noise ordinance takes effect, you have to reduce the number of people based on the number of bedrooms. And another thing to try to get these from being out of control is everybody parking at these vacation rentals has to park on the property on an approved hard surface. They can't be parking up in the grass. They can't be lined up and down the street. No signage at the property. And part of that $400 fee is going to pay for our inspectors, which we contract with Lowe's Park inspectors, for them to get in there and do an occupancy, all trades inspection, to make sure that everything's up to code, that we're not letting somebody lease out something that could be potentially dangerous if it's not up to code. So I'm open to any suggestions or thoughts.
Let me make a comment, before we get into discussion. So this, and I've talked to Carrie, and I think this is well written. This is very much a developing area of law, not only in Illinois, but across the country. These Airbnbs, VRBOs, these short-term rentals, sometimes go really smoothly and sometimes have horrible results with 20 or 30 people and 10 cars, 15 cars, and very much disturbing to the whole concept of R1 property is to create rules so that when you live in an R1, when you live in your nice R1 home, you have quiet enjoyment of your property. And the rules that apply to you apply to the guy across the street, and they apply to the guy down the block. And yeah, people may rent those homes, but they generally rent them to people who are there and have families, and they use them as residential property. When you start inviting people in, and there's a tendency or to have, well, I've got this, we're coming into Rockford to watch the soccer games, and let's get all the parents over here for the party. Well, a big party on this night or that night or whatever, it really disrupts the people who live on either side, the people who live in the neighborhood, the people who live around. And it's kind of contrary to the whole point of having R1 rules, is so that everybody can quietly enjoy it and sit on their front porch and have a Coke or a cocktail and watch the world go by. So there have been a lot of lawsuits that have come out. The state actually proposed an amendment to the state statute back in 2019, which I think never, it died in committee, but I think it'll end up coming back. There's arguments about what home rule units can do versus non-home rule units can do. We're a non-home rule unit. Non-home rule units can really only enact legislation that is specifically authorized by the state statute. Home rule units can go beyond that. I think there's a very strong argument to say we can do this. The definition within the zoning statutes allow for communities to develop ordinances consistent with what I just kind of talked about, keeping zoning districts consistent and uniform. And so, plus we have things like home occupations, where you're allowed to have a home occupation. Think of the therapist, the physical therapist who has one person come over, they park in the driveway, they come in, they do work on your leg or your back or whatever and help you out, and then they get in their car and they leave, and it's not very disruptive. They don't sell products, they don't sell, or hair salons, as opposed to having a home occupation where, trucks are dropping off product that you're selling. That's not allowed. So my point is, we have a permitting process for that. Permit, license, potato, it's the same thing. So I think there's precedent to say you can place conditions on via a license or a permit on how people use their homes. But again, I caution all of us that there's going to be legislation on this, and whether it's the Supreme Court or the appellate courts or the state legislature may pass some statutes in the next few years that say, hey, here's what you can do, and then it'll usually what they do is they say, here's the minimum. If you want to do more, you can. Here's the maximum. If you want to do less, you can. It can go both ways, but we'll just have to wait and see. I think for now, this is an important thing for us to do. The only thing that occurred to me was a density issue. Can you have 5 Airbnbs on the same block?
And we thought about that. We thought about whether it would stop one owner from buying and running multiple Airbnbs in the village.
I think it's unlikely that would become a problem.
Yeah,
it occurred to
looking
me
at what we have now, it's not a problem. But
I've got one up and around the corner. I really see it ever in the neighborhood I live in.
And there's been other, like when we were regulating EMB's electronic message board signs, and I was proposing that they have to be like 500 feet apart from each other. And then there's a little discussion about, well, just because that person put his sign up first, do we really want to stop that person from putting his sign up down the street? And I thought this could probably end up at that kind of conversation if we limited how many can be on it in a neighborhood or owned by one person.
This is good, so I don't know, if we perceive a problem, we can come back.
Yeah.
So I have a question,
Uh-huh.
because of what it's what I do, but does this make it a business? And what I mean by that is, do I require them to have a fire extinguisher? I don't care about the lights so much, but, because we can enforce in residential, well, we could, I guess, smoke detectors, CO detectors, stuff like that. It's not you, it's somebody else using it, so you need to have that fire and life safety check. I know the other inspectors will be in.
Yeah, I think they'll just be in to make sure everything's up to code for our residents.
But is that
I would say no.
okay? Which is fine.
Well, wait.
I don't need to add to it.
The way this is written, I think we're preserving the residential character. We're just putting limit conditions on how they use it in the Airbnb standpoint. There are other communities that have categorized them as businesses and commercial, like a residential commercial use or a home occupation. So it's being done differently in different communities.
Because I've rented one, and they did have that stuff. Not so much the exit lights, but they had the fire
So
extinguishers.
It's
Okay, I just,
different in different communities. It kind of screams for some state legislating to make things universal, but
and
I think this is very good.
I don't know what the right dollar amount is, but what, is it in the area? I mean, does Rockford have one?
And, I reached out to other
Rockford does not
neighboring
have
communities to
Okay.
find out what they did.
I
And
mean,
the $400, a lot of that's going to go towards getting those inspections
yeah.
done.
Okay, and I guess it's not excessive by any means. I was just wondering how we came up with that.
And we don't, and I talked to Michelle, our finance director, about whether we should be collecting a hotel motel tax with these, because some communities do, and that,
If you're collecting a hotel motel tax, then it's a business and he's
yeah,
coming in
and
there
we're,
and he needs
and
fire.
we're not, because some communities that
Right.
try to do that, they spend more money in legal fees
There's been-
battling the person who
There's been
doesn't think they
litigation on
need
that
to.
issue as well,
Yeah, so we're not going, but because it could have, there could be a lot to look at and regulate, and
I'm sure Scott or Calvin are going to call me anyway, which is fine.
so we decided on that $400
Honestly,
fee.
Love Spark called me and asked me about this, and they may be going a little different direction, more limiting than we are, more limiting with this.
Was that just today?
I got an email like Friday. I talked to Gino today.
Right, because Izzy talked to Loves Park today also about doing the inspections that we're talking about.
We had a nice debate. We agreed to. Well, it's not that we agreed to disagree. I understand their position. They're going to go more business side. They're not going to allow it in residential. They're going to want to see it in like a where hotels allow, which is weird in my opinion, because we don't really have homes in those areas. So it's
Yeah. They don't want it.
they don't want it. There's a faction of their boards, their city council that just wants to ban it, which is problematic because the minute you ban it 100%, then you open yourself up to a lawsuit. It's like saying, I don't like having mobile homes in my community, so let's ban them. No, you have to allow them. You have to have a category. Just limit where you allow them and have them follow the rules. And Rockford has gone the other way. I called Rockford to talk about it because I had a client out in the county that was doing this. And Rockford's like, yeah, well, I mean, we can go on Airbnb or VRBO and look, and there's literally hundreds of them in our community, and we're just letting it go. We're not doing anything. It hasn't really been a problem, so we're not worried about it.
And because of that, yeah, like you're limiting the number of people. VRBO already limits that. Like you can only, we have the option.
Yeah, I
The
think that's
owner
the
is like-
owner lists what
Yeah,
they're
you
limiting.
can only, you gotta rent it more than one night. 3 nights is kind of excessive. I mean, if I'm gonna go somewhere, I'm gonna spend Friday and Saturday and leave Sunday.
No, but people rent them for a week.
Oh,
Yeah, a week, I've rented them for a week.
I went to a wedding in Florida and rented a house for a week.
Yeah. I just rented one in Galena for 12 people. And we were able to all park on the street
Mhm.
as well as the driveway. And Machesney really doesn't have a lot of paved large houses anyway, so you're gonna be parking on the street.
Well, but then with this, they wouldn't be allowed
Back to
to
this-
park.
And they wouldn't be allowed to, which I
And-
think is kind
Back to
of
this one,
pretty
I think this one
restrictive.
puts pretty good conditions on it. I think we should give it a run.
And there's probably going to be some cases where that people are going to try to sneak in more people than our code allows. So
Yeah,
try to
that's a
park
hard
on the
one.
street for a while and try not to get caught. But if they do get caught, they could potentially have their license revoked and
Yeah.
possibly pay some fines.
It's mostly trying to prevent the large party.
Yeah.
Is your main goal.
And keep this consistent with the residential nature of a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Did we get a motion yet?
So I need a motion for the,
I'll make a motion to approve.
in a second.
Second.
Discussion? Any more discussion? Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Stanton,
Yes.
Commissioner Danilovich,
Yes.
Commissioner Klinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Fluger,
No.
Commissioner Alms,
Yes.
Commissioner Heideman's a yes.
This will go forward with a positive recommendation to the Planning and Economic Committee. So, Item 7, discussion, comprehensive plan update draft, Chapter 2, a vision for the future.
Yep.
Carrie?
If you'll remember, I've been bringing pieces of this to you guys when I have time and when we have smaller agendas. And I've taken all of our goals and objectives for residential, commercial, industrial, transportation, economic development, parks and recreation, and public facilities, services. All of those that we've gone through previously, I've taken your suggestions and put them all together, which would comprise this chapter 2 of the plan. So I hope if you've had a chance to read through this, that you saw any suggestions that you guys had addressed and fixed in here. And if there's any other discussion, I'm all ears.
One area under E, under objective number 1, you mentioned safety at key intersections in the village. I guess, is there a definition of what the key intersections are? Sometimes it's just nice to be more specific. I see right below it, the intersection of 251 Forest Hills and Burden Road. I don't know if we want examples or specificity for that or not.
You talking about the
Number,
transportation?
yeah, I'm sorry, transportation E, objective 1, the traffic flow and safety at key intersections in the village.
Oh,
I guess, do we want to define those or not? Is it needed?
I don't know if we need to define it.
Okay.
And especially if some funding comes in. A lot of this I look at is the way we want to word something so we can say, hey, we planned for this in our comp plan. We can say, hey, that's a key intersection to us. So
Yeah, I guess,
thank you.
yeah, I guess under that,
Limit.
I would like to know at some point, like but what the key intersections would be. We wouldn't have to put it in the verbiage here, but I don't know, just for future development, I thought that would be like, I was trying to think of what are the key intersections in Machesney Park? I guess it's just a moot point in this, but that's what I was wondering if it was worthy of it or not. So I understand.
Yeah, if we were to identify the intersections, that would kind of narrow it down to
Mhm.
not focusing on other ones.
Okay.
This is just because I'm curious. Under F, goal 3, number 9, facilitate redevelopment of the Loves Park Auto property. Is there, are they leaving or?
I mean,
How are,
they've been working on cleaning that up and trying to sell it. They did a subdivision a while ago to create separate parcels there. they've had a plan to remove some of the junk from there
There was a
and
brownfield grant, 15 years ago, and a brownfield study was done, because they were breaking batteries and stuff.
Materials.
Lots of contamination, although the brownfield report came back relatively good. We probably still have it, although it's probably outdated.
yeah.
I'm sure we still have it.
But especially since that's such a busy intersection, it's
Yeah.
not ideal to have that use there.
Yeah, it's a really congested now that they moved out of that new building and put everything in. It's hard to get in and out of there with anything. I don't know if anybody's ever shopped there, but to go there for a medical call or something,
Catch what I would add.
it's crazy, crazy.
Number 9,
So,
let's Park Auto.
you can talk to the Jack Brothers like, wow.
Yeah, we have many times.
173.
I have one comment
Arts
at
Place.
the bottom of page 19, under that, referencing the RAEDC.
Oh, that's not bad anymore.
Good standing, yeah. The RADC will not exist any longer. I would suggest perhaps the Regional Economic Development Department of, I'll slow down, the Regional Economic Development Department of the Greater Rockford Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
Could you email those letters real quick?
Yeah, they just announced that just recently.
Yeah, I'm apparently going to be on the board of that.
Oh,
Is-
well,
is that-
congratulations.
I'm an RADC, I've been an RADC board member for years, and we took members off the RADC, members off the chamber, and members off the Greater Rockford North, GRGP, Greater Rockford Growth Partnership,
Yeah.
which was a total fail. I could go on for a long time
Yeah.
about what a total failure that whole process was, but I think now it will be, hopefully this will work out.
Is there an acronym for that? Is this-
That's what I said.
When I say Regional Economic Development Department, that's not, they haven't named it yet. There's going to be an
Okay.
economic
okay.
development arm
Okay.
to serve the region, but they really haven't.
Looks like red.
They really haven't identified if it's a committee or a department or a division or a commission. I don't know what it's going to be.
Okay,
Um,
I'll just leave it at what you
As
suggested.
the REDC guy coming over onto it, it will be one of my missions to make sure their EDC aspect is very robust. That's the second time I've used it.
Robust, that's a good word. All right.
I like that word.
Yeah.
I tell them there's a game they're playing. Robust.
Robust is a robust word. Okay,
I guess one other piece of feedback in the vision statement, the last one, Machesney Park remains a safe and friendly community and a convenient location where all are welcome to live, learn, work, and play. I guess if we want to incorporate, I was thinking 173, 251, downtown district and the TIF district shop. Do we want to include it?
Live, learn, work, play, and shop?
Well, you can put shop wherever you want. I just think that live, learn, shop, work, and play. But I don't know. Again, semantics, but at the same time, it's just another thing. If we're going to incorporate businesses in the
Yeah.
vision
I don't think
statement.
it's a bad suggestion.
No, I'll do that.
Well, we're gonna throw eat, because, you know.
I had dined there. I had dined, but I didn't want to
restaurants.
go too far. Because if you ask my daughter, there's not enough to eat. I'm 173.
Yep.
Besides Buffalo Wild Wings and Chili's. But yeah, I did have shop. I did have shop and dine. I was like, I'm just gonna stick with shop and see what if it sticks.
Live, learn, shop, dine, work. That's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's why I went with
Dine
shop
might
was good.
Play, eat.
come here, do everything.
Mhm.
So I'm just looking at H, your utility goals, community service facilities and utility goals. I know we kind of talked a little bit about, in the past, of the fiber optic network that Rockford has access to. So is there any, do we have access to that? Is that gonna be some cooperation you were just talking about and trying to expand that?
and we have some fiber optic going into our right of ways as well.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've
Still
started,
Ralston Road.
they've been requesting permits and they're starting to do it. We met with them some time ago, not that long ago, and it'll be a year of build out, I would guess, maybe
Yeah.
more, but
But that's encouraging, yeah.
Mhm.
yeah. I-3 broadband. I
It's
think
here,
called.
because,
I-3 broadband.
No.
yeah, Ralston Road, I know, it's holding up some of the Henning construction right now.
Oh, is it?
It's in the way.
That's the one that's building out in Rockford already, right?
I think, I-3 is building out of rock.
And I was in Florida this weekend and I drove past a place and it was a linear park. Is anybody familiar with a linear park?
No,
Okay, it was actually a kind of scratching my head. Is that a bike path or something along those lines? But under G, this is just a point of discussion, maybe future. But we have floodplains, we have floodways, and we've talked about this interconnecting system throughout Machesney Park, and then we have the river and whatnot. The linear park is essentially, you can't use bicycles on it. It's essentially walkways, but it's incorporating nature and art.
Mhm.
And I thought that I just would like to plant the seed somewhere that, considering we are Machesney Park, if you've never heard of a linear park before, it might be something unique to the community. If we incorporated something like that, if we're in the developmental stages of, what we've talked about between the river and then basically, what the high wires and the green spaces that we can't really formally use. So we have floodplains, floodways. I thought, I'm just going to throw out linear park to you guys. Something to think about with the engineers.
Yeah, I went to Omaha earlier this summer and they have a nice downtown linear park area down there.
Okay. It could cause for some confusion if there's a bike path or walkways too.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like,
Is
There's lots of no
Rockford's,
skateboarding signs around.
Rockford's bike path considered linear? Because there's art and there's everything along there. It's a bike path.
no, I did look up the definition of it, but it includes certain things. But no, a linear park, I think, is essentially just a walkway. I don't even know if it's a runway, but it might be something if it was like there's one in New York City. It's called Highline or something. It's 1.45 miles and it takes about 30 minutes if you're stopping. And I know that you said we want to incorporate art and landscape and things like that, but a linear park, Machesney Park, and I thought, all right, just throw that out there. I just kind of came to me at the last couple of days, and then since we were reviewing this, I thought it might be not worthy to necessarily add, but just a point of discussion.
I don't remember if we talked about this before, but back in transportation, section E again, number 7, where it's talking about the access for EVs at village-owned properties. And
Yeah,
other-
that's actually something I added. I
Okay.
attended a conference and they're talking about EVs at length. And if we're going to have this goal of, or the governor's goal of having so many EV vehicles on the roads, right now, it just doesn't make sense when there aren't that many charging stations. And if we're going to end up with that many EV vehicles, some of these people who are encouraged to own EVs may not even have a garage where they can charge in their home. And so there's discussion about having them more dispersed, having them where people who don't have a garage can still go somewhere to charge up their vehicle.
And would that be the village partnering with private entities to provide those, or paid
In
for
some
by the
cases,
village?
or looking to put them on village property. There's a lot of bigger issues that may stand in the way of this becoming a reality, but I thought it'd be a good idea just to stick it as an objective, whether it happens or not. There's a lot of factors, that cost being one of them.
Well, because then there was another one, I was trying to find it. I know I have, you talked about green development of businesses, and I couldn't remember, I thought we had talked about also trying to encourage green more for the residentials as well. Oh, it's section C in the objective number 10, encourage new development to utilize green technology by investing. So I didn't know if there was anything on the residential side that we needed to put in to help encourage that continued as well.
But we have so few residential standards. We really don't regulate other than meeting building code, we don't need to look at architectural plans. We don't need to look at much detail at all if somebody's building a brand new home. So it'd be a lot easier to, encourage LEED certified construction with commercial industrial properties
Gotcha.
where we do require architectural plans.
Okay.
Any more comments?
I think the only other question I had, Pick and Farm Interstate Crossing. Can you refresh my memory? Is that on the east side or the west side of the interstate?
It's on,
Is that
the Pick and Farm is immediately west,
immediate west of
Yeah.
that? Okay,
the stoplights to nowhere.
okay. That's what it is. Okay, thank you. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure, so.
We
Nothing
need-
to vote on for this one, right? This
We
is
vote
just
on
review?
This is discussion.
This is just discussion. Yeah.
Okay.
Item 8, any other business for the good of us? Seeing no public comment or public, I don't think there's any public comment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
So I don't think we had more.